You're listening to Sweet Bites with Sandra with your host, Sandra Colton Medici. Tune in every Thursday to satisfy your entrepreneurial sweet tooth. Follow on Instagram at Sweet Bites with Sandra Podcast and Sandra Colton Medici. You can also join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Sweet Bites with Sandra. Hi, I'm Sandra, and I'd like to invite you to subscribe and listen to my new podcast, Sweet Bites with Sandra. Satisfy your entrepreneurial sweet tooth in each episode, full of digital business tips, inspiring interviews, asides from my entertainment career, and rewards to celebrate your sweet success. Find Sweet Bites with Sandra on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Welcome back to Sweet Bites with Sandra, the podcast. I am so excited to be talking with my really long-time friend, Joe Lucchese. And I haven't spoken, actually, I should say, I haven't seen you in a long time, but we've kept in touch on email and all of those other social platforms. So thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Yes, thanks for having me. It's great to be able to see you again and speak with you.
Yeah, well, so you have transitioned from way back when I knew you in Las Vegas to now you are the executive vice president at Groundswell Experiential. So tell people exactly what it is that you do there.
Yeah, well, in order to share that, the backstory of this is that Groundswell Experiential recently acquired Project, which was the agency my partner Mike and I founded and started approximately from 2014 through March of 2020, and then we were acquired in March of 2020. And with that came the new title of Executive Vice President. And my main role for Executive Vice President is to make sure that all the agency's goals and objectives are being met from an executive level. And I could go in a lot of detail about what that is on a day-to-day, but I'm sure you have some specific questions. But
Well, yes. Well, so how does it feel? Okay, so I know from knowing you what you can do and what your capabilities are because you started with Event Joe. So talk about that because it's kind of like an evolution of you going, through that kind of like producer mode. I feel like with a lot of different touring and bands and events and just kind of this like evolution of what that was. So can you talk about some of the people I know you've worked with, like BlackBerry and U2 and like all of these great organizations and entities? So can you kind of start with that and where you created that platform from and what kind of, what is that inspiration that keeps you going in that experiential lane?
Yeah, for sure. So Event Joe was my first answer to what it meant to be an entrepreneur. And I went to school in Las Vegas at UNLV to study hotel and entertainment management. And from there, I was able to determine what my North Star was in terms of making a living and what that meant to me and my happiness. And fortunately, I was born with that because I always knew from a very young age that I wanted to be involved with some sort of fashion of entertainment, be it the logistics, the production, the backstage. And over time, leading up to college, those specifics were unveiled to me. So, for example, I'll never forget, it was probably 1996, summer of 1996. I was at the New World Music Theater, which was a famous outdoor amphitheater in the Chicagoland area, and I was watching the Dave Matthews Band. And as I was stumbling around the dark on the lawn, I looked, knowing again that I wanted to be in entertainment. And at this point, I was ready on track to go to UNLV shortly thereafter. I saw the band playing. I'm like, you know what? That's great, but there has to be a team of people behind the band that makes them able to perform and function as a unit that people love to come and see. And I said to myself, that's who I want to be. I want to be the person behind there. And I remember thinking to myself, standing with their arms crossed, looking out to the sea of people. That's who I want to be. So from there, went to college, found experiences that allowed me to tickle those different interests. And then ultimately, a year out of college, I was working for downtown Las Vegas at the Fremont Street Experience as an entertainment manager. And that opportunity afforded me so many different experiences, from being a location manager for major motion pictures, for being location manager for TV, film, and video shoots, to being the event manager for big festivals. But I always wanted to go on tour. Always had it in me that I wanted to go on tour with a band. And coincidentally enough, a good friend of mine who I went to college with started working for a large entertainment company called Bill Silva Management. And he was asked to go on the road with a punk rock band at the time that was blowing up. And that punk rock band was called Unwritten Law. And they had a bunch of hits out on at the famous platform at the time was TRL, Total Request Live. So they were making some big noise. He did a tour with them, and then during the year of after college, me working for the Fremont Street, my friend came to me and said, "Look, I know that you've always wanted to go on tour. There's a new singer songwriter that's about to break. We need someone to help drive his 15 passenger van with a trailer. Would you want to do that?" And I said, "Yeah, I would love that. But, what are the details?" And he's like, "Well, the pay's not good. It's about $300 a week. You're not going to sleep. You have to give up your job, and we don't know what's going to happen after this." So I gave up a really good job working for downtown Las Vegas and Fremont Street to live in a van for a couple of months. And that singer songwriter ended up being Jason Mraz, and it was one of his first tours that he did in North America.
That is crazy. But obviously, you made the right decision, right?
I did. I did make the right decision, and this goes into another lane of conversation where identifying the North Star. So you asked me, I think, a little bit about like the motivation and what I do. It really comes down to identifying what your North Star is, and that North Star will change. It should change over time, but it's a guiding post for you to look up as a North Star is and help direct you. So I knew that I wanted to be involved with entertainment. Didn't know what, but that was my North Star. Why I went to UNLV. At UNLV, it afforded me more opportunities. Went on tour and got that bug where I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is great. This is what I always wanted to do." And then eventually that led me to working for another company, because the touring cycle runs based on, at least at this point, I'm sure it still does today, but it runs on the schedule of album releases. And so after these tours I did with Jason Mraz, he was going in the studio to write an album. Another band that I was kind of working with was going in the studio to write an album. So I had about a year to 2 years of time where I said, "I'm not going to go on tour right now anymore. I want to focus on the opportunity to really increase my salary, my experience with a professional organization." And an opportunity presented itself where I was able to be the production manager for an entertainment company called Triumph Entertainment. And their big client was another group called the Rouse Company, which no longer exists. And the Rouse Company at that time owned shopping centers and shopping destinations all over the country. And they were investing about $1 billion into the new project on the Strip for Las Vegas, which was the Fashion Show Shopping Center. And they were completely redoing it and were building custom entertainment installations, everything from stages to major LED screens to a giant catwalk for fashion shows and other production for it. So I took the job and managed that entertainment platform for about 2 years. And while I was there, I couldn't ignore the fact that I loved touring, but I was also an entrepreneur. And I didn't really understood what that meant to be an entrepreneur. And mind you, this was 2003 through 2004, 2005. So within that 2 year window, I really learned a lot about entrepreneurship, to the point where I said, all right, if I wanted to have the career that I want, being back on tour, working for big brands and big bands, I can't do this here. I'm going to have to make a leap of faith. And I did. And what I did was I started a company called Event Joe. And it was essentially just me. And I tried to make it look bigger and badder than it actually was. But what Event Joe was at that time was a touring and event management solution for brands, bands, and agencies. And I saw an opening in the market, which was independent contracting work, experiential marketing work, and brand work, band work needed one individual, but I could supply those entities with team members that I really liked working with and I trusted, and put them out on the road or give them projects and kind of build a small team of independent contractors. And I did that for, gosh, probably about 4 years. And in that 4 years, I was able to do major world tours with the likes of, the Kings of Leon, the Police Reunion tour, which you can see on the wall here, and DJ Z Trip, Mixmaster Mike, and a whole bunch of other really interesting artists, which led me to working with brands. And brands would call me up and say, we have this large program that's going out. We need someone to manage this. And it would be everything from, we're going to be in one city for a month and 6 cities. So about 6 or 7 months worth of a project. And we're going to need you to live in Miami, Dallas, Las Vegas, LA, New York City, Chicago for a month at a time to produce these experiences. So with my work ethic and just a really good solid list of people that I would bring in, the reputation grew, the name grew, and opportunity came from that. And one of those opportunities was working for another big agency. But I just want to stop there and see if there's any questions, or if I'm hitting
No,
hitting.
I'm pulling it all in because I knew you from way back with Will.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like this is like it's so funny because it's your evolution. You've always been a go-getter. And so it's interesting hearing kind of the way that it came about because I've seen flashes of your brilliance, along the way of, you being able to pull people together. And so just here, I'm just listening to it because you're a good storyteller. So I'm just listening to it. And I feel like the people who are going to listen to this podcast are going to understand that, it doesn't take a village to start a business. Like you put yourself out there as Event Joe and then built upon that, obviously. So when you're thinking about some of like the lessons that you've learned along the way, what are maybe two things that you could say, that, gosh, if I had started Event Joe now, what would I have done differently that I made that hiccup there and I could have totally fixed that.
yeah, that's great. I think the greatest lessons are failures. And one of the biggest lessons I learned was within the first 18 to 24 months of me working on Event Joe. I was traveling 11 months out of the year for about 4 years. And while you're moving that fast, it's hard to think of anything that's outside of the moment. Touring is a very hard industry, but in my opinion, it provides people with some of the best work ethic because you're on a plane, you're on a train, you're on a boat, you're in a car, you're wherever, the back of a taxi or an Uber, working constantly. And you have to create systems and processes that help you be efficient. I didn't know that during my first year to 2 years of this. And as I said, I was solely just looking at where I was and not where I was going. And I didn't pay attention to, when this project ends, what am I going to do next? Because a lot of the project work is either with a consistent band or a brand and it just overlaps. But for whatever reason, this particular time in my life, I didn't have it planned out. So I hit the summer without any without any work lined up. And I had money in the bank and saved it all, but it still was very hard. And it took a lot out of me emotionally because I was still grappling with what it meant to be humble, what it meant to have pride in your work, but what it meant to just be humble and not worry about what other people are doing. A part of my personal demons has always been, is my ambition big enough, or does my brain power and my smarts match my ambition? Sometimes you need both, because it's really great to have the ambition, but you need to have a solid plan in order to quench that ambition. So at that time of my life, I was associating ambition and success with material things rather than personal satisfaction, or ultimately where I've landed now, with love, right? So
Right.
that was a very big stepping stone and learning curve for me that I would recommend to other people: is plan your work and work your plan, live presently, but don't forget about the next 3 steps that you need to make in order to create security for yourself. The other thing that I've learned is the power of tact and negotiation with tact, or just dealing with people with tact. And tact to me is making a point without making an enemy. So having a smooth conversation or words with your, using your tongue, for speech, for the benefit of what you're working on together collaboratively, even if it's a tough negotiation, or even if it's, and this is how it started, talking to a roadie when you're loading in a DJ show at a primarily rock concert before DJs were big, and having everyone look at you and being like, who's this who thinks they're going to set up their turntables here, and having to go into that environment and smooth them out with charm, with, words that would match the occasion, and not being bitter or nasty about it, because every time that we run in that situation, we would always get pushback from those types of people. So learning to circumnavigate that through tact has served me well, but I've learned some pretty bad lessons from it not going well. So those are the two things: having tact and then planning your work and work your plan.
My other question for you has to do with going from Event Joe to project, because that whole process, how do you stop one and start another, or did it just kind of fold into something else?
It's a great question. So because of the work I was doing with Event Joe, and it being exhausting, I realized that I needed a couple of things to succeed. So I started focusing on that. I just started asking, willfully out to the universe. So I concluded in the spring of 2008 that I wanted to have a team to support me, that I wanted to have control over my schedule, control over my income, and I wanted to be able to be in one place. So at that time, it was Chicago for me. So it was those four things that I really had the mindset to want to identify and find. So from spring until summer, I had thought that that meant it needed to happen on my own through my own resources, meaning building a team that could do that for me and with me. But I forgot that I was asking for something. I was asking for those four things. So as time went on, an agency that was based in Los Angeles had reached out to me and said, we've been working together for quite some time now. You've been an independent contractor of ours. Would you be open to doing a full-time situation? And with that, Joe, we would give you the opportunity to stay in Chicago and open up an office for us. You'll have control over your schedule because it's your own office. You'll have control over your income because the new business that you bring in will benefit you. They basically gave me the opportunity for everything that I had asked for. But again, my mindset was it needed to be on my own. So then that's when I really learned about, so if you're going to ask for something, theoretically, and really make that a mandate and a mantra in your life, you have to be open to how you're going to receive it, because it's not going to always come in the perfect box. So that allowed me for 4 years to do some amazing projects. That's when I worked with BlackBerry and U2 and toured with them, the Black Eyed Peas, Coldplay, and a whole bunch of other really amazing projects. But it was during that time where, once again, my ambition was bigger than my capacity to make it happen. And I started to get unhappy in my job. I started to get complacent and bored and frustrated. So I had to go back in, towards the end of 2011, I had to go back inside myself and say, all right, Joe, you're getting older now. You're wanting to start a family and, grow your personal life. What do you want your day to look like? How do you want to wake up every day? And how do you want to make money and do that and support your family and your loved ones? And so after months of soul searching, I landed again on a couple of things that I wanted. I wanted to use my network for everyone's benefit and find a way where I could make a living by supporting other people's creativity and interests and aligning with a win-win solution. And then that evolved into, well, maybe there is an event or something that I could do where I could gather like-minded individuals together, connect them, and they could share information. To me, one day in January of 2012, locking myself in the office for a week and writing the first draft of a business plan for what would become Project. And then from January until July, I just refined it. I found people that were smarter than me and believed in me to help me with the initial idea. And then I created a small, I guess you could call it like founders team of 4 or 5 individuals that I really liked working with and that believed in the vision. And then finally, July of 2012, we did our first event. And it was a true form project event where we connected about 30 people, all analog, meaning they would walk into the room, we would introduce them together for specific reasons, and we would highlight those reasons. So like, Jill, you're a brand manager, and Bob, you're an experiential agency owner. You guys need to meet. those sort of connections. And then we brought in some really interesting speakers to give their points of view on what their expertise was. And it was after that event where I said to myself, this is it. I want to invest everything I can to make this happen. So I quit my full time job in August of 2012. And as I was leaving that, I got approached by another agency to bring me in at a much larger pay rate. And I said to myself, well, this must be a sign. So maybe I should put Project on hold. Again, Project didn't have a name at this point. So I put it on hold. And within 2 weeks, I knew I made a horrible decision. I hated the job. I just hated it all. I was going against every fiber in my body and all my cells of what I was supposed to be doing and what I wanted to do. So I quit that job without any income and just said, screw it, went for it. And how I did that was aligning up, again, plan your work and work your plan using those past failures. I lined up key consultancies that I didn't know at the time, but were everything that I had wanted to happen and what eventually Project would become. So I did that, and that helped fund the family, and that helped fund these little endeavors to keep the project lights on. And then ultimately, it came to a point from what was it? It was 2012 through 2014, where we had done several events for Project and came up with a name, came up with the identity, came up with different technologies, and invested all of this through my partner Mike and I's own means to make this packaged event that connected people, that gathered data, and was a live stream series, was a speaker series. It was all the things that we wanted it to be, but it still wasn't making us money. So ultimately, the summer of 2014, another big agency came to me and said, Joe, we loved your work when we worked in the past. We see that you have a new team now. We would love to bring you guys in and white label you in order to produce this massive experiential program that we're doing at the end of the summer in 2014. Do you want to do it? I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. But I only said that because the previous months didn't go well for us financially. We had lined up several different major programs that were all based on consultancy, meaning we were going to refer agencies, get a big retainer commission from that, and then keep that money going to invest in a project. All those went away within about 3 weeks, and it was absolutely devastating because shortly thereafter, my son Frankie was going to be born, and I had banked on all of this income because it was a sure shot to then allow me when Frankie was going to be born in May to be home that summer and help raise a newborn. But all that went away, so I was sitting literally looking down the barrel of a life gun where I'm like, all right, there's no money coming in. I have this startup. What are we going to do? But if it wasn't for that additional leap of faith to take this opportunity with this agency, Project would never have existed the way that it was ultimately destined to become. And so what happened was, while we were doing this big project, all of my partners that helped me with Project and that I brought in to help me with this project sat me down and were like, why are we doing this for another company? We should be doing this for us, for Project. And I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely right. All my efforts of moonlighting and consulting are in vain because I'm spreading my energy and my focus around. I need to be very focused. And that's always my belief, is if you don't have focus, especially when you're starting a business, it's next to impossible. You need every bit of mind power and energy honed in on one location to make it successful. So once that decision was made in my mind, it was literally like a rocket ship just blew off. We started taking meetings and traveling to New York. I'll never forget, it was the fall of, it was November of 2014. I went to New York and met with as many people as I could within like a 3-day period. And from those meetings, we had the foundational client base that helped start Project. And then 2015 started to really blow up for us. We started getting new clients, and then we started getting RFPs from mega brands like Anheuser-Busch. And that was the beginning of what Project became. And what Project became was a 3-tiered experiential marketing agency that focused on true to form experiential marketing, representing entertainment properties for brand partnerships, such as concert venues in general, and large festivals. And then our third pillar was our proprietary events. So the Project event eventually became monetized, and we created several smaller events within that. And through the use of social media, how we promoted ourselves, and the ultimate ethos, which is if you win, we win, that led us to being acquired by a really great group of people, which is Groundswell Experiential. So that's the big lossy version.
That's amazing. Well, so now I know that you are, you're humble in that kind of you're throwing out names, but you're kind of just dancing over them. And I feel like there are so many people who have not been introduced to you properly. And if they're looking for someone who does what you do, I will certainly put all of your contact information into the show notes for this particular podcast. But
Thank you.
what I wanted to touch on is something that you continually do, and I'm not sure when you turn it off, which is you're constantly working. And now that you have a family, that's one of the things that I know that some listeners will probably struggle with is being their own boss, but knowing when to turn off that work switch and put it to bed. So what's your process like? Do you bring your phone into the your where you sleep, or when do you turn it off?
Yeah, so a part of my process starts in the morning to keep me grounded, and I do a lot of journaling in the morning, more about just writing things that I want to have happen, and just taking a collective inventory. And then I do a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of, but I try to meditate 3 or 4 times a day, even if it's for a minute to 5 to 10 minutes. And that really helps me to be grounded. And that's something that I found over time that helps bring things to my life, or helps me to realize who I am and how I should approach a situation. The other part, which comes with experience and comes with any small amount of what you deem successful in your life, um, for me, it is looking back now and saying, you know what, I've accomplished everything that I asked for. So I'm not worried anymore. I'm still very ambitious, and I'm still very competitive, but it doesn't consume me like it once did. And I was that way. I was always on my phone first thing when I woke up, last thing when I go to bed. And I'm guilty of it too. But now where I'm at in my life is I understand that the moment is happening, especially after having a child, that the moment is happening now. And do I want my son to think about the times he spent with me not being present? And that's something that my parents, especially my dad, because we're talking about, obviously a guy, and my dad's a man as well. I never look back on my childhood where was not present with me. He was always present with me. And what we do right now in the moment is going to give us our future. So if I can't do that, if I can't turn it off, then what is the worth? Why is it worth turning on? Does that make sense? And
Yes, it does.
the big thing for me is I love what I do. I am so in love with all of this that it's not work to me. Yes, there's parts of it where I'm like, this sucks. I hate putting together contracts, and I hate these little administrative things that I can only do and that I need to do. So I'll just try my best to not procrastinate and do that. But it's not really work for me because it's such a passion. But that doesn't mean that I can't try to be present in each moment. So
Right. Well, that definitely, I know that being present for me helped me contact you not too long ago and say, I need you to tell me what to do because I was in the middle of one of my moments of, what do I do next? I've done a lot in entertainment, and I've done a lot with publishing. And now I'm kind of like in this weird zone because I had just graduated from my, doctorate program. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And you know what you said to me? You said, just start.
yeah,
Right? And that's what a lot of people need to hear. They don't need to hear the details of it necessarily. They just need to hear the words that they probably knew themselves in the back of their head, which
yeah,
is do what you love. And that for me was priceless. I really should have just paid you for that advice at that point. But I definitely wanted to thank you for that. And then one last question. Do you have any advice for people who are in maybe your similar situation where you've got a great project going, right? And then you merge, right? So what are some of the things, some of the lessons that or takeaways that you learned from merging with another company and still keeping, I guess, true to who you are in that process?
Yeah. Well, merger and acquisition is a little bit different from we were acquired, meaning everything that was and is project is now owned by Groundswell.
Gotcha.
And I guess the same. My answer is going to be the same for a merger. Is you have to do it with people that you really care about. You have to have good people. If you don't have good people on either side, it just won't work, regardless of what the details or what the deal points are. So Ed Slavin is the president and founder of Groundswell, and he and I and my partner Micah and I have worked together for a number of years prior to this. Um, and there was just an innate trust of understanding who he is and who we were and what's important. And that is the most important thing because yes, it's a different brand. It's no longer a project. It's a different brand, but the soul of what we were and what we built is exactly what Groundswell wanted. And that soul is a part of me. So that makes it so much easier. It makes it so much easier because they're not saying, all right, now you have to dye your hair and wear a uniform and change that tattoo or no, it's we love you the way you are. We want you to do that and we want you to do it underneath this flag now. It's a lot easier to do that and say yes. Especially, I think the other part is getting out of your own way. Like we've been approached several times for a merger or acquisition and it just never felt right. But getting out of your own way, your own pride and being like, okay, I know when a good thing is done and I know when the next thing is done. And going back to what I have always said, the questions I was asking or what I wanted to put out there was I want to do this, but I want to do it bigger and better and more efficiently. You know, we got to a point with project where yeah, we could have kept going, but the ambitions of what we wanted to have probably wouldn't be obtained through the current way that it was. So again, it got answered, just not in the package that I originally thought it was. So get out of your own way and do it with people that you really care about or that are good people.
Nice. Well, that is a great way to end this particular interview. Stick with us on Sweet Bites with Sandra for the rest of the podcast episode, but check out Extra Bite on the blog because he's sticking with us to answer just a few more questions, and we'll see you on the next one.